Can the government help us ride a bike? So what are we doing about these high prices of gasoline? There seems to be a lot of talk with little or no solutions to this growing problem. Some say there should be a subsidy for e-bikes, backed by the government, not based on the price of gas. Apparently, it's not quite figured out yet. But Deed Myers says in a tweet, "You'll have to be a California resident and own a car and we'll work from there." In addition, the governors of 6 other states have urged Congress to suspend the federal gas tax for the remainder of the year. The governors wrote to congressional leaders, "Money saved at the pump translates into dollars back in consumers' pockets for groceries, childcare, rent, and more." Surely, if your concern is people who need money for groceries, childcare, and rent, then the subsidies should be extended to everyone, not just the owners of cars. In a time when much of the U.S. is desperate to find alternative fuel sources, it does not make sense to encourage people to drive as much as they do now, which is what these tax cuts would do. Since the American oil and gas could be exported to Europe to replace Russian fuels, investing in alternative fuels makes more sense, both environmentally and politically. Reduced demand typically reduces a product's cost as well. Nevertheless, North American politicians have a special fondness for drivers. Shouldn't they be encouraged to explore alternative modes of transportation? Instead of subsidizing cars, why not subsidize bikes, cargo bikes, and e-bikes? In a recent study, INRIX found that 48% of trips in American cities are under 3 miles long. Another English study found that e-bikes have a more transformative effect in suburbs and lower density areas, where distances are longer and there are fewer options for transportation such as walking or transit. Now, author and journalist Peter Walker writes in The Guardian about a study finding 67% of Britons who might be interested in purchasing an e-bike are put off by the price. According to the poll, 53% of these people would be more likely to buy an e-bike if there was a subsidy of £250 offered on a £1,000 model. Given the complaints one hears in North America about the price of e-bikes, it stands to reason that the same would happen here. Bike is Best, the group that sponsored the study, says the following to Walker: "Electricity will be the future, but not in the way you might think. All of the focus for subsidies has been for electric cars, but this new report demonstrates how essential electric bikes are to decarbonizing transport, improving health, and cleaning the air at the same time. Moreover, gasoline usage will be reduced. The time is right to think about it in the wake of the pandemic. Improved bike infrastructure was rolled out within weeks, and the number of people riding bikes skyrocketed. We are currently experiencing a different crisis, and people do change their habits in times of crisis. I am thinking of the men who approached me at the hardware store, and I say the following in a very excited voice: e-bikes are a solution, and a much cheaper solution than that electric vehicle you're thinking about. You can also compare the cost of owning and operating a not inexpensive e-cargo bike with the cost of owning and operating a car, noting that a fancy $6,000 Urban Arrow comes in cheaper than a car that costs about $10,000 per year to own and operate. Ramey acknowledges that a big concern is traffic vulnerability. This is why investing in safe places to ride is probably more important to governments than subsidizing e-bike subsidies. It gets even more difficult when so-called environmentalists who do eco-strategy don't recognize that bike lanes generally look empty since people do not get stuck in them. Nonetheless, most Americans live in the suburbs, where the e-bike can be unlocked and where roads are wider, and the installation of a bike lane is less disruptive. Even though it is often said that not everyone can ride an e-bike, the same is true of not everyone who can drive. If you want to get people off gasoline, whether it is to fight climate change or Vladimir Putin, regardless of speed of adoption, costs, equity, safety, the amount of space needed for driving or parking, embodied carbon or operating energy bikes, e-bikes, and e-cargo bikes are the best choice for the vast majority of people. Rather than a short-term band-aid solution, why not invest the millions, possibly billions, in these proposed subsidies for drivers into e-bike subsidies and bike infrastructure and create a permanent, lasting solution? Your tax dollars are worth it. I have a number of videos covering themes like this one, and although I don't claim to have the answer to all, I do like to throw out ideas I have found that show some promise. Let's simply bike more and enjoy the fresh air and nature while slowing down a little to get somewhere. If you have any comments, I encourage you to post them below and I will reply where necessary. Likewise, please subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when I post a new video. This has been Gary's Resolve.